Donald Trump himself says Iran has a, quote, last chance to sign a peace deal. But the US president not placing a deadline on negotiations, saying it's because he's not on the ballot in November's midterm elections. He also calls Iranian leaders unbelievably duplicitous as he and Iranian officials dispute his account that talks between the countries are underway. Iran today threatened to strike American warships if the US naval blockade reimposed last month continues. Well, Alayna Treene connecting us from the White House. Unbelievably duplicitous is how Donald Trump then describes the Iranians. A source regionally told me yesterday that the US, Iran and Oman are in discussions. Not clear whether those are direct negotiations, though, between the US and Iran at this point. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, I've been catching up with my White House sources here, Becky. And look, part of the reason you heard the president use that language yesterday, saying that Iran is incredibly duplicitous, is I was told by one White House official that he was fuming yesterday when he was seeing all of the reports from the Iranians essentially arguing that no, they had no plans to move forward with talks and negotiations on this, and that, Iran was saying that they were solely having these negotiations with the Omanis. White House officials argue that's just not the case. What they told me, and of course, as we've seen throughout this entire war, Becky, a lot of this is, you get one version of events from the U.S. side, another version of events from the Iranians, but they argue that there was a huge uptick in reach out from the Iranians and from different officials, people like the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, to U.S. officials directly throughout the weekend, trying to solve particularly this issue on the Strait of Hormuz. I do want to note that the latest we've heard on a potential deal is coming from the Qataris today, a spokesperson for the Qatari Foreign Ministry arguing that there are drafts of a potential agreement that are being circulated and that all parties are in discussions here. But from the president's view, he's willing to see how this goes. I think from the conversations I've been having, he's very much in a wait and see kind of place and posture right now. He does, of course, his ultimate goal, which has been the same goal really from the beginning, is he wants there to be some sort of long-term permanent deal to both reopen the strait, have free flow of traffic through that key waterway, and also a deal on nuclear. The issue has been, of course, can they actually get there, particularly after the strikes we've seen exchanged between both countries in recent weeks, really continuing to chip away at the lack of trust between these two countries. There's also a different issue that's been developing here in Washington, Becky, which is there are many people, and White House officials acknowledge this in my conversations with them, many people in the intelligence community that aren't confident that the Iranians will ever agree to a deal or ever honor any sort of commitments that they might make. And so that's adding to this as well. The president, for his part, though, wants to give diplomacy a chance, but he's also reserving the right to continue with attacks if needed. So unclear where this leads, but I know currently they're optimistic that there will be some sort of announcement regarding the strait in the coming days.
A cargo vessel reported being struck by an unknown projectile in the Strait of Hormuz. You can see where it happened right there, just north of Oman. It lost power, forcing the vessel to request immediate assistance. The status of the crew at this point, unknown. As far as oil prices, they are a little bit down this morning. Trying to get a sense up a little bit now. If we just stay here, they'll go down again. We just watch them move, but right now more or less flat as we begin the day. CNN senior business reporter David Goldman is with us now. Just in general here, it's still a somewhat tenuous situation.
Yeah, here we go again, right? And it's interesting because you mentioned oil prices are down, they're up, they're down, they're up. 8 times since the beginning of the war, President Trump has done this. He has said, you know what, I'm going to call off this massive attack. We're going back to the negotiating table, and oil has plunged. And it's interesting, even after that ship was struck, you're not really seeing oil up that much. WTI, American oil, is down. Why is this going on? It's like the president who cried peace, right? Well, let me take you through the foggy mists of time, John, back to June. The Red Sox were 14 games under 500, and oil was down below its pre-war level. This is the same phenomenon that the oil market recognizes, right? As much as Trump is saying over and over and over the same exact thing, they recognize that it doesn't take much to get oil all the way back down to $70 a barrel again, because we might be in the same situation where oil starts coming through the strait and then all of a sudden there's way too much oil, and not the situation that we're in right now where we're trying to get oil through the strait. They don't want to be left holding the bag. That's the situation.
It really is interesting, though, that why they would think this time is different than the one before, or the one before, or the one before, or the one before.
That's it, right? Exactly. I mean, it's kind of like fool me 8 times, shame on me. But this is the thing that they're concerned about, is that he only needs to be right once. He was right in June. Yeah. Oil fell through the floor, and they don't want to be caught in that same situation again if they're long oil, if they think that oil is going to go up.
That's a really good way of putting it. He only needs to be right once here. David Goldman, thank you very much for that analysis. And we like the trade?
I think we like the trade. I'm excited about that.
Adley Rutschman, new catcher for the Boston Red Sox. Thank you very much. Sarah.
All right. President Trump warning that Iran has, quote, a last chance to sign a deal with the U.S. to end the war. But he also says there are no time constraints on negotiations, as you just heard from David and John there.
This is at least the 5th time you've turned off airstrikes against Iran since April to negotiate. What is your message to the American people who are wondering what has changed this time? Why should it be any different?
Well, you don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to maybe get something, but I want to give them every last chance before decapitation. Very tough to do what we have planned, still planned. We'll see what happens.
Iran says it is only focused on negotiations with Oman over the Strait of Hormuz, and that its goal in these talks is to establish a safe temporary route for vessels through the critical waterway, which Iran would control. CNN's Leila Gharagozlou joining me now from London. What are you learning as you watch these negotiations where you have President Trump saying, hey, we have plenty of time here, but Iran is going its own way, seeming to sort of walk away from the U.S. and head towards Oman?
Yeah, so Iran has said that they are specifically only speaking to Oman to try to find another route for these vessels that have been stuck in the strait to be able to safely cross. We actually heard from one of Iran's negotiators just today saying that they were looking to set temporary arrangements lasting about 1 to 3 months to try to get things moving. Now, many of the analysts that I've spoken to over the course of today have said that for anything to get put together between Iran and Oman, the U.S. would also have to have buy-in. So it's unlikely that we see a deal that really wholly sets the U.S. aside, but it could help kind of ease the pain that we've seen on these shipping vessels, on the oil markets, as David just pointed out earlier. So it is something that could really help. That being said, it's not the first time that we've heard that Iran and Oman are talking about potentially an alternative to the main route of the strait. It's something that's come up time and time again over the course of the last couple of months. And much like everything else in this war, it's very much a time loop, Sarah.